are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and welcome to our webinar. We're so glad so many alumni and friends have joined us today for the webinar, Benefits of Organic Food and Farming, with University of Minnesota faculty Mary Rogers. My name is Erin Elliott, and I'm the Senior Director of Campus Engagement for the University of Minnesota Alumni Association. Thank you to everyone that has joined us live today. Today's webinar is part of a free series being offered by the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, where we're having conversations with experts about career, life, and learning topics. We'll be running monthly webinars from now until May. The webinar is being recorded and will be viewable afterwards at minnesotalumni.org/alumni webinar series. Just give us a few business days to post it on our website. And if you're on Twitter right now, tweet us with hashtag UMNwebinar. We'd love to hear from you. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. If you join the presentation listening from your computer's speaker system by default. If you prefer to listen over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane of your GoToWebinar panel, and dial and information will be displayed. If you experience any audio difficulties while listening via your computer speakers, this can usually be caused by having too many multiple software applications open, which can use up your computer's bandwidth and affect network performance. Feel free to close any unnecessary applications on your computer. Questions are welcome, and you can submit them at any time. Please type in your questions in the questions pane of your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll be monitoring them along the way, so please submit your questions, ideas, or tips. This is going to be a fun conversation, and we want to hear from you. We have a great webinar and excited to learn more about organic food and farming with Mary today. Organic food purchases are steadily increasing, and organic food sales represent over 4% of total food sales in the U.S. By all counts, organic is now mainstream. However, consumer confusion regarding the term organic remains strong. In this webinar, she will describe the organic certification process of the U.S., discuss the organic philosophy, address common misconceptions regarding organic agriculture, and review the science behind organic food and farming. Have you ever found yourself in the supermarket wondering, is organic better for me? Is it worth the price? And what does the label mean? I'm very excited that we have Dr. Mary Rogers, Assistant Professor of Sustainable and Organic Horticulture Food Production Systems in the Department of Horticulture Science at the U of M. Mary has earned her BS in Environmental Horticulture with an emphasis in Sustainable Agriculture in 2003 and her MS in Epidemiology in 2008 and her PhD in Plants, Soils, and Insects from the University of Tennessee in 2012. Mary's research program investigates plant-insect interactions and biological and environmental strategies to improve the production of organic vegetables and fruits. She teaches the undergraduate and graduate classes in organic vegetable production and urban agriculture. Mary, welcome to the webinar.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for the intro, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about my favorite subject. So, as Erin mentioned, I'll be discussing the benefits of organic food and farming. There is a lot of labels out there right now, so I think that leads to a lot of consumer confusion when we're in the grocery store deciding what to purchase and all of those decisions that go into our purchasing decisions. So I'm going to start out by sharing with you some fun organic farm facts. So according to the most recent survey or census of agriculture in the U.S., and this is the USDA National Agricultural Statistics Service, there are over 14,000 organic farms in the U.S. California really leads the nation in organic production. We have almost 3,000 farms in California. But we're not doing too shabby in Minnesota either. We have about 512 organic farms in the state. And these numbers we're expecting to increase nationwide. There's almost 4 million acres farmed organically in the U.S., and of that, Minnesota has 133,000, and we're kind of a leader in the national organic movement here. So we're third in the nation right now for organic soybean. And here's some slides I pulled from the Organic Trade Association website showing the steady increase of organic food sales in the U.S. So the blue bar is organic food sales, and the green bar represents non-food sales. So these are things like organic textiles, toiletries, cosmetics, those sort of things. And those are also increasing. But right now, we have $39 billion in sales of organic products as of 2014 in the U.S. The vast majority of American consumers purchase organic food products at least some of the time. A recent Consumer Reports survey showed that 84% of American consumers purchase organic food, but production is not really keeping up with the demand. So the Organic Trade Association thinks there's lots of room to grow here, and that we might have more organic farms and farmland in the future. 51% of families are buying more organic products than a year ago. So this is fairly recent data from a 2015 study. We have a lot of these new consumers of organic products are parents that are interested in buying organic fruits and vegetables for their children due to likely concerns of pesticide residues and maybe some perceptions that organic products are healthier. And these are just a few facts that I've pulled that I thought were fun from the Organic Trade Association. So 26% of organic farmers are under 45 years old. So this is kind of interesting right now because our average across all farms, our average farmer age is 57. So we have an aging farming population, but there's a lot of beginning and young farmers that most likely are not coming from traditional farm backgrounds wanting to get into organic agriculture. And so we are seeing kind of a sea change in who's growing our food. And it's interesting to we'll have to develop some training and some resources to support these young farmers. And there are about 300 organic inspectors in the United States. So these are folks who are trained in visiting farms, and they work through certifying agencies to visit the organic farms to provide the certification necessary to maintain the integrity of their organic label. And right now, organic soy pays more than 300% per bushel over conventional. So this kind of speaks to the potential profitability of organic agriculture. So that's about $9 a bushel conventional soy compared to $11 a bushel that organic growers might capture. So that's, I'm sorry, $30, $9 versus $30. So that's significant. Some facts on the organic market. Organic fruit is really on the rise and is in high demand. We have organic strawberries have the highest price premium of the fruit class. So organic strawberries are on average 42% more expensive than the non-organic counterparts. And potatoes are leading the price premium for the vegetable market. So 60% premium on potatoes. And organic milk also is experiencing a fairly high premium. So organic milk is about 70% more expensive than conventional counterparts. And we'll talk about why these premiums exist and why organic products are just in general more expensive than non-organic. The most important predictor of organic purchasing is education, followed by income. So the organic trend is really being led by folks with a college education that have fairly good jobs and can afford to pay those premiums. The average number of organic food products carried in mainstream supermarkets has increased over the years. So organic is more available and accessible than it ever has been. And part of this is because Walmart is the most common retailer now where people buy organic products. So Walmart has really expanded the availability and access of organic food to consumers. However, not all organic producers are really happy about Walmart joining the organic game. This is because Walmart is a price maker, and it can reduce the profitability of organic farms because they're interested in selling at low cost. So this can have the unintended side effect of driving small farmers out of business and really favoring the larger organic farms. So what is behind the premiums? Why are organic products more expensive than non-organic products? And well, first of all, they're not always more expensive. Premiums can really vary based on the product, the season, when you're buying them, where you're buying them. So for example, if you're buying certified organic tomatoes from a farmer's market in the summer, you're probably paying less than what you would buy in the winter. So they really can vary. And the organic farmers have increased costs associated with organic production. So they're paying for the certification, and this can be $200 to $1,000, and this is a yearly fee based on the size of their farm and the intensity of their operation. There are cost share programs to help offset the cost of certification that the USDA can provides, but there's certainly more out-of-pocket expenses involved with getting certified. And then in addition, organic farm inputs and labor costs are often higher than conventional counterparts. And then your post-harvest handling and processing costs can be higher. So there's often less volume involved with organic processing, and then also there's an issue of segregation. So the processing facilities have to keep organic products separate from conventional in order to maintain integrity of the product. So that can result in increased processing costs. And then consumers, there's a high demand for organic production or for organic products, and the consumers have willingness to pay. So think of the whole food. So some people economics doesn't play a large part in their purchasing decisions. And here's a quote from Joel Salatin. Joel is founder of Polyface Farms. So he's kind of a champion of organic farming and a little bit of a radical, but his quote was, "If you think organic food is expensive, have you priced cancer lately?" And we certainly don't have any scientific data substantiating that organic consumption reduces your chance of cancer, but there's this kind of speaks to the perception that organic is healthier and better for you. So what is organic agriculture? There are a lot of different definitions of what organic agriculture is, and it's because the people are using the term differently because it represents a philosophy, a practice, and also kind of a marketing tool all wrapped into one. So we're going to kind of break it down here. And I'll talk a little bit about history of organic agriculture. And I thought I'd mention some pioneers because it's not such a new movement as you might think. So Sir Albert Howard is often called the father of organic agriculture. And he was a British agronomist and a botanist working in India as an ag advisor. He was doing a lot of research on composting. So he's considered also the father of modern composting. And he's written books like Products of Agriculture. And he really studied nutrient cycling and how what we deem as waste can be recycled and put back in to the land to supply fertility for our food. And then working off of a lot of his foundational work was Lady Eve Balfour, who was a British woman and the founder of the Soil Association. So that was Britain's leading organic food and farming organization of the time. So she kind of built upon Sir Albert Howard's idea of compost-based farming and integrated it into field-based experiments on the farm. So she really established the first long-term studies of organic farming side-by-side comparison to conventional farming to really highlight the benefits of composting and using natural-based nutrient sources. And then J.I. Rodale is credited for really expanding the popularity of organic agriculture in the U.S. And so his family founded a publishing company, the Rodale Press, and they have a lot of gardening books and health magazines, and they still have organic gardening being published today. So some of the history of organic agriculture, we'll just kind of walk you through the timeline here, is organic agriculture was the standard really before World War II, when most of the technology and the developments that went into winning the war, when the war was over, those new innovations then were applied to agriculture. And so we had an increase in synthetically produced fertilizers and crop protectants, hybrid seed corn, and these things. So we were experiencing really a boost in our production and farming efficiency, and a decrease in human labor. So this is kind of the birth of our modern day agricultural system, characterized by high yielding crops and large farms growing monocultures, and the consolidation of farms, small farms into larger farms. And Rachel Carson wrote her seminal Silent Spring in 1962. So in Silent Spring, she really highlighted some of the negative effects of widespread use of broad-spectrum pesticides such as DDT and organochlorines, and how they were having effects throughout the food chain. And Silent Spring was that the name comes from the fact that DDT would thin the shells of a lot of songbirds, and so we were losing songbirds at a rapid rate. And so she was able to trace it back to her use of organic chlorine pesticides. And so that book caused a big environmental stirring and interest from consumers. And so that book kind of laid the foundations for the Environmental Protection Agency, which currently regulates our use of pesticides in the United States. California was the lead state behind the organic movement. So they created the Food Act in '79, which established some basic practices regarding organic production, what should be allowed, what shouldn't, and how organic farming should basically what values they should adhere to. And so that turned into interest in the Federal Organic Foods Protection Act. So this was passed to allow some consistency in interstate trade and for the formation of the National Organic Program. So the final rule of the National Organic Program was first published in 2000. So it took about 10 years to write the rules, and then organic didn't really start being enforced until 2002. So this was a federal regulatory framework governing organic food within the United States Department of Ag. So there's a lot of part of the reason why it took so long to come up with some regulations and rules around organic production is because there's a lot of values and ethics behind the organic philosophy, and it was just a little tough to come up with a definition that really suited everybody. And so here's some of the big ones that organic ag seeks to address. So the principle of health. This is how farming can sustain and enhance the health of both soil, plants, animals, and humans involved. Ecology, so organic production should be based on natural processes and cycles that maximize and emulate things that are happening in nature. Principle of fairness, so this is that agriculture should build on equitable relationships both with the environment and the people involved, so the consumers and the farmers. And the principle of care, so we should be producing in a way that that would aid the ability of future generations to produce for themselves. Okay, I'm going to skip over this one because we already kind of talked about this. So what is the definition of organic? So this is the United States Department of Ag definition. Organic agriculture is an ecological production management system that promotes and enhances biodiversity, biological cycles, and soil biological activity. It is based on minimal use of off-farm inputs and on management practices that restore, maintain, and enhance ecological harmony. So this is the definition that it took them years to nail down, and it's a pretty good one. But you'll notice differences within what the USDA determines as organic, and the International Federation of Organic Movements. So this is the umbrella organization for all organic movements globally. So the first part of their definition is very similar to the USDA definition. What's really missing, though, is this social component, so the people component. So organic agriculture combines tradition, promotes fair relationships, and good quality of life for all involved. So that was a bit controversial when the USDA came out with their definition. They had to kind of come out with a compromise of how to mesh the organic philosophy and values with a system that could be economically viable and fit within sort of our paradigm of agriculture. So what does that mean to the farmer? So here's the definition in practice. So farmers use modern technology. So I thought this was important to highlight and nail home, because I think a lot of people have the misperception that organic farming is the old way of doing things, that we're using horses and we're not really producing as efficiently as we can. And farmers, so they're using modern technology. There's new equipment, there's new crop varieties that are being developed that better match organic systems, and there's better developments and innovations with livestock and animal practices too. So it's not exactly the the old-fashioned way. It's a little bit different. And I would say these three concepts are kind of a unifying theme of what the organic rule means in practice. So organic farmers rotate their crops. So it's diversifying their planting practices in time, and I'll explain what that means a little more. Diversifying, so most organic farms are not monoculture farms, so you usually have more than one crop being produced, or you have multiple crops growing side by side, or you have rotations happening. And I'll explain some of the ecological benefits of these practices. And then reducing off-farm inputs. So really, if the goal is to maximize reliance on natural processes, so you're trying to close that nutrient loop. So you're using manures and cover crops to provide fertility is an example of how you would close that loop. So that means that you wouldn't be purchasing fertilizers off-farm. So that's kind of the goal. Crop rotation is really a foundational practice in organic agriculture. So it's been shown to build soil health, so it increases organic matter in the soil. It reduces erosion and loss of topsoil. It prevents problems with diseases and pests because you're not getting buildup of inoculum or pathogens in the soil, and you're not providing the ideal environment through back-to-back monoculture for pests. And then there's a yield boost due to this, what's called rotational effect. So the longer your rotations are, it tends to be, the longer and more complex is better in general, but you can't, this isn't always practical from a farming point of view. And there's a real science about which crops follow which crops better, and to maximize this rotational effect. And then integrating cover crops can provide fertility and other benefits to the soil. So in organic systems, fertility has to be provided by things that were once living. So they have to be natural sources. And so farmers use things like cover crops or green manures to manage fertility. And so here's this picture is showing nodules formed by rhizobium bacteria in the soil that has a symbiotic relationship with legume plants. So this basically allows the plant to make its own nitrogen. And it's the only group of plants that can do this. And so we can take advantage of that because the plant is producing its own nitrogen, and that nitrogen can then be turned back into the soil and provide for the crops that are growing in that soil. Animal manures are another source of fertility, and these can be applied either raw or composted. And the organic system has regulations based on when to apply these animal manures, how long they have to be on the soil before your crops are planted, and so on. And then supplemental fertilizers are also allowed. So things like fish, poultry litter, bone, blood meal, feather meal, and mined materials are examples. So these are how organic farmers provide crop fertility. So a big challenge for organic farmers is managing weeds, pests, and diseases. So in conventional agriculture, there's an arsenal of products, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, that growers can use, and they can rotate these products and to manage their problems. And these products are better used maybe are designed for a monoculture system. So the first line of defense is prevention. And you can prevent diseases and pests from building up through rotating your crops and by diversifying the farming landscape. And so organic growers they do have natural, organic approved herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides, but they don't have very many, and they don't last very long, and their efficacy can be less than their conventional counterparts, and they're expensive. So really, organic growers have to use an integrated management program for their pests. And so different ways to do this, to manage weeds. Weeds are the #1 issue in organic farming systems, most often than not. And so tillage is one method to manage weeds, or using things that cover the soil, so mulches. You can use a variety of different mulches like straw, newspaper. You can use plastic mulches as long as you remove the plastic at the end of the growing season. So there's a number of different strategies that organic farmers can use. Flame weeding is one way to manage weeds in organic systems as well. So, and insects, it's the same kind of philosophy. So you're trying to diversify the landscape, rotate your crops, so preventing pest buildup from happening in the first place. And then there's a lot of interest in providing habitat for beneficial insects to provide natural biological control. So these are insects that attack and eat other, our pest insects. And there's a lot of different plants that you can plant on the farm to provide resources for these good bugs. And so that's a practice that's widely used in organic farming. And then there are also some organic pesticides that folks can use. And then for diseases, it's kind of the same philosophy. So prevention first, and then it involves rotating, use of cover crops, use of diversified plants so you don't have buildup of diseases in the soil, and then removing inoculum, and then also there's a few sprays as a last resort. So how does a farmer get certified? The certification process is a little complicated. It starts out by a farmer contacting a certification agency and then creating what's called an organic systems plan. So this is a plan that includes all the details of how the farmer is going to grow their crops. And I have some more info on that in an upcoming slide. And then scheduling, once the organic systems plan is approved, then there's an on-site inspection scheduled. So this is when a certifier would come to the farm and then walk around and make sure basically that what's in the ground and what's on the farm is matching what's on the paperwork. And there is a 3-year transition period before becoming organic. So this is 3 years since the last prohibited substance was applied. So if it was a piece of land where there was some synthetic herbicides, fertilizers, or insecticides applied that aren't allowed in organic production, you'd have to wait 3 years for the land to reach what they consider that like an equilibrium. And this transition period also allows the farmers time to really get their practices rolling, and it's kind of a trial or training period, if you can think about it that way. So here's kind of a diagram of what the certification process looks like. So the step 1 would be going through that transitional period and then finding a certifying agency. There's many to choose from in the US. And then start on your paperwork and submitting your organic farming systems and the plan and the fee to the agent. And then there's the inspection, and then after the inspection, there's a review period, and then if everything is up to snuff, you'll get your organic certificate, and then you can use the organic label. So the process, there's a third-party, inspection involved. There's integrity there, and the inspection has to happen every year. So there you can see that this can be for some farmers this is a burden. For others, it makes sense to go through the certification system because of those organic premiums, and there's real consumer you can have real consumer confidence that the organic label means something because there's paperwork and there's the certification process to back it up. So the organic system plan includes some of the following. So the farmer has to document their crop rotation system and field management history, so anything that went into the field and where they acquired it, what they're using for fertility, where they're getting their seed and which varieties they're using, how they're managing pests, sales information, and then conservation of biodiversity, so what they're doing to prevent erosion, what they're doing to support wildlife and other beneficial fauna on the farm. So there's really a lot of thought that goes into the process. So examples of what's not allowed. So these are prohibited substances. No GMOs are allowed in organics. Most synthetic pesticides and fertilizers are not allowed. There's some exceptions like soaps and oils are synthetically produced and allowed. No growth hormones, no sewage sludge, no irradiation, and no prophylactic use of antibiotics. So you can't treat animals with antibiotics before they're sick. There's things you can do when your animal is sick, but they can't be used as preventative. So who decides on what's allowed and what's not? There's a board called the National Organic Standards Board, and so it's a diverse group of farmers, environmentalists or resource conservationists, consumer interest public groups, handlers, processors, retailers, a scientist, and a certifying agent. And so they serve terms and they kind of rotate. So the rules always they're changing. So the NOSB gives recommendations to the National Organic Program, which the National Organic Program then adopts and puts into the regulatory language of the rule. And so it's a dynamic process. And as a result, too, organic farms are really different. So we tend to think of them all as sort of the same. We lump them together as the same thing. But you have large and small. You have some that are less diverse. You have some that are highly diverse. You have some that integrate animals. You have some that are just focused on vegetables. So there's not one type of organic farm. And you have the farmers might have different philosophies too. So you might, on some of these large-scale organic farms, you might be really reliant on inputs that that other organic growers just simply don't want to use. And the diversity of organic farms can be kind of shown in where they land in sustainability. So in sustainability in agriculture, to be sustainable, the farm has to be economically viable, environmentally sustainable or bearable, and then have kind of a benefit to society. So providing healthy and safe food for the community, providing jobs, and well-being aspects, quality of life aspects. And so now I'm going to go through where organic farming kind of lands within those different spheres of sustainability. So we're looking at this review just came out, and it was awesome to read because it was very timely for this webinar, but it summarized a lot of the results from multiple meta-analyses on organic farming versus conventional farming. So people have been studying this for a while, and so this is the summary of all of that kind of data. So the biggest critique of organic farming is that there's a yield decrease. So it really does vary based on the crop and the production practices, but in general, organic can be 8 to 25% lower yielding than conventional. However, the same study found that under drought conditions, so when water is a limiting factor, organic does better. And that's because organic farming systems tend to have higher organic matter in the soil, and so it's a more resilient system, and the plants are not as stressed under drought conditions. So this could have really important implications as we move on into the future and with facing climate change. Also, organic foods have less to no synthetic pesticide residues, which is important to some people. There's not a lot of data right now linking pesticide residues to human health impact. So, so we don't know if that's meaningful or not, but for some people, it's important just to know that they're consuming less pesticides. And of 15 meta-analyses, 12 of them found some evidence of organic food being more nutritious. So these are things like, I think that the specific nutrients mentioned were by some organic products had higher vitamin C content, total antioxidants, so those are the cancer-fighting molecules, and then total omega-3 fatty acids. So whether or not also it is meaningful to human health is debated, but I think there's a body of literature substantiating health benefits of organic agriculture. And then organic production can reduce risk from antibiotic resistance, and it's because they're not overusing those antibiotics in animal farming. From an environmental standpoint, organic farming systems have better soil quality and less erosion. There's greater plant diversity, faunal diversity, and habitat and landscape diversity in organic farming systems, which result or lead to greater ecosystem functioning. So these are things, some examples of greater ecosystem functioning could be establishing pollinator habitat, or incidences of biological control by beneficial insects, for example. There's less nitrate and phosphorus leaching in organic systems and fewer greenhouse gas emissions. Now this is per unit production area. When they do the same calculations per unit of food or product, they tend to find no effect, and that's because the organic farming systems are a little lower yielding, I think, in general. And there's greater energy efficiency per unit area and per unit output in organic systems. So I have the citation of the review that I'm pulling this data from at the bottom, and so if you're really interested in going back to the source literature, it's there for you. And this actually should be not environment, but this is economics. When the actual price premiums are included, organic is more profitable than conventional ag because people are paying more. So 22 to 35% greater net present value. So it can be better for the farmer and has higher benefit to cost ratios than conventional. However, the downside is that labor costs are higher in organic farming because a lot of that weed and pest and disease management has to be done by hand, and picking usually happens by hand. So that can be kind of a drawback, but it could also be a benefit if you're thinking of it as creating jobs. So it depends on how you're looking at it. And more economic analyses monetizing externalities. So these are the things that aren't factored in the cost of food. So conventional agriculture, some argue that we're not really paying the true cost of food. Externalities in conventional agriculture are things like nutrient leaching into groundwater. So we're facing the dead zone now in the Gulf of Mexico due to excess fertilizer runoff in the Mississippi River. That's a big externality that's not being paid for. And the loss of topsoil that cannot be replaced is an environmental externality. So if those were monetized, some argue that organic would be found as even more profitable because there's not as many negative externalities and there's more positive externalities in organic systems. And then from a well-being point of view, there's not as much data out here or research supporting this. Mostly we see things in the economic or environmental kind of spheres. But in this well-being or social sphere, Organic agriculture has been shown to support more community economic development, and the money it retains in the community more. There's increased social interactions between farmers and consumers. This is many organic farmers direct market, so this kind of would play out here. There is a potential reduced risk to farm workers and improved safety. So this would be things because if you're not spraying, or if you're a smaller farm, maybe the risks of farming just aren't as high. So there's not really, the NOP does not have clear social goals or any language in the rule regulating some of these social goals, although the International Federation definition stipulates that organic farming should be safe and dignified, should provide safe and dignified working conditions for the farmer and farm workers. So this is kind of a fun pictorial. So this is kind of this is from the same review again that just came out, taking all the potential benefits of farming and showing them side by side, conventional and organic. And this is based on the studies that have been done. So right now this is kind of a flower shaped diagram. So the orange petals indicate production, blue is environment, red is economics, and green is indicating well-being here. So you can see that that even though the organic farming systems tend to be lower yielding, they're better balanced, and there's multiple benefits in organic farming systems that you just don't see in the conventional systems. So things like in the green, reducing worker exposure to pesticides is pretty low in conventional and is pretty high in organic. Ecosystem services, so again, these are things like providing pollinator habitat or habitat for wildlife are higher in organic systems, and that's as a result of the diversity. You have less energy use in organic systems and better soil quality, better biodiversity, and then you have that profitability benefit too, and this is because of the premiums are higher in organic systems. So potential barriers right now to organic farming expanding are there's powerful vested interests and existing policies. So in the U.S., agribusiness, commodity groups, and food companies have a really strong vested interest in the conventional business as usual model and a stronger lobbying arm that organic farmers just don't have. And our trend has been consolidation of industries and the concentration of market power, and it disincentivizes, I think, innovation in ag and alternative farming systems. And there's a lack of information and knowledge for farmers, and there's a lack of money being allocated to research in organic farming systems compared to conventional. So that's a problem as well. There's weak infrastructure and other economic challenges. So beginning farmers don't have, organic farmers often don't have access to loans, insurance, and other resources that they would need to start out than other farmers. And there can be tough access to markets as well. And then there's also traditionally a lack of technical assistance with organic production from land-grant universities, although this is changing now because there's positions like mine that are being more common. So I think that's a good thing. And also organic farming and the organic movement there's misperceptions and cultural bias that oppose the values that behind the philosophy of organic systems that limits practices and production. So I thought I'd throw this out there. This is what I see when I go to the grocery store. It was like, how do you make a decision regarding what to buy? Everyone's looking for, the best food at a reasonable cost, and so it can be difficult to make a decision. And I can't speak to the veracity of the claims of a lot of these different labels, but I hope that this webinar, as we're wrapping up, gives you a clear understanding of what the organic label is and what that means, and the benefits behind those farming systems. Because it's not, you know, it's for real. It's not a greenwashing campaign. It's not something, it's not just a marketing tactic to get you to spend more money on food. There are very real benefits. You know, unlike some of these labels out there where you see gluten-free on a bag of corn chips where it wouldn't have gluten in it to begin with, or trans fat free on something that wouldn't also have trans fats. So I hope that you understand a little bit more about the label. And I wanted to shout out how awesome we are at the University of Minnesota in organic farming research. So the U is really a national leader. We have over 800 certified acres devoted to organic research, and this is across 6 different research and outreach centers throughout the state. We have organic research crossing multiple ag commodities. So dairy is really big here, agronomic crops. We have organic research on beans, vegetables, and fruit, which is kind of where I fall in. And we have, the U of M has Cornucopia, Student Organic Farm, that's been around for a decade now, and we're just going through a new strategic plan. Our goal is to be the best student organic farm in the country, and I think we can do it. And then MISA, the Minnesota Institute for Sustainable Ag, has been a great resource and support for organic agriculture in our state and at the U. So we have a lot going for us, and there's a lot to be proud of. And I'm throwing up a couple resources, digital resources, websites you can go to if you want to learn more about organic farming, particularly in Minnesota. So I have my lab website up there, rogerslab.cfams.umn.edu. And then we have the organicag.umn.edu is more broadly shows the overall organic efforts happening at the University of Minnesota, and that will be updated too regularly, where that one's going to be going through an overhaul. And then also the Minnesota Department of Ag has a great website for organic farming in our state. So with that, we can transition into questions. Are there any questions here? Okay, so we have one. What is the bushel output for organic versus conventional? So that's really going to depend. I don't have an answer for you. It depends on the crop. And the studies on this are conflicting too, because it also depends on the farm and the production practices the farmer is using. So some studies show that crops like clover and grain crops like wheat have similar yielding to conventional counterparts, whereas fruit production is lower yielding, but then some studies will show the opposite. So it's not an easy question to answer, and it varies. So, but I think with more research, more resources devoted to research, we're really closing that yield gap in organic production, and we're able to maximize the fertility and our knowledge on how the system works, because the management systems of organic farming is really a lot more complicated than conventional farming tends to be. So I think in the future I can confidently say that yield gaps are going to be narrowing, I hope. So what else do we have here? So Paulo's question is, a key driver to the premiums for organic are demand and willingness to pay. What percent of the premium would you attribute to this? How much of the higher price can be attributed to good marketing and not just costs? And that's one that's really hard to answer too, because it really depends on the individual farm and the costs associated with the production of those individual farms. So I know that the premiums, some of the premiums is due to marketing. So if, for example, if you're buying from Whole Foods or some of these really higher end grocery stores, you can get equivalent products, even things that are, you can look at a can of salsa, for example, same brand, same size and quantity, it'll be more expensive, at Whole Foods than it would be at Cub. So some of that is just the retail outlet. So there's a lot kind of that goes into that. So I'll move on. What do you find are the shortfalls of organic cropping systems compared to conventional? I think the shortfalls from the production standpoint would be, well, there's that yield limitation that we're still trying to close the gap on. There's also organic cropping systems from the farmer standpoint. There's more of a burden from the paperwork and the regulatory aspects. So you have to keep very detailed organic systems plans. They have to be up to date. You have to submit them on a regular basis. Otherwise, you're going to lose your certification. So that's a barrier for some people, I think, in transitioning to certified organic. So other drawbacks would be the difficulty in weed management is a huge issue, and I think that's playing out in the yield gap. And we just need more tools. So, and that comes back to more research devoted to organic production. What foods have little to no economic benefit between conventional and organic? I'm not sure if you mean from the farmer standpoint in premiums. So there are some, and the premiums too. It goes back into input costs and also what you can get for the product. So going back when I said strawberries were the leader in organic premiums for the fruit class. So strawberries on average are something like 42% more expensive than conventional. Some of the lower ones, that paper cited grapes. So grapes are only maybe 20% higher. And I think this might be because there's lower input costs between those two crops, or it's a supply issue. And these things, the premiums kind of are dynamic and they change too, depending on the year and the season and what kind of weather conditions are affecting production. So I think that really can vary. I think that looks like all the questions that have come in, and I appreciate you tuning into the webinar and your interest in this topic. If you want to get in touch with me, my website's up there. You can find my email, and I am going to throw it back to Erin. And
Great. Well, Mary, I just have one question. Are there any foods that you should always buy organic?
So the Environmental Working Group has come out with this like dirty dozen list,
yep.
And you can look it up. And I think they base it based on how many pesticides are applied to those crops. So some crops are just a little tougher to grow because there's more pest and disease issues, and so therefore the growers have to use more chemicals. And so again, there's not a lot of data that substantiate the health impacts of those residues, and most of them are within the EPA limits. But if it's something that concerns you, then you can go on you can do a Google search and look up the Environmental Working Group. I think apples were one of them, and potatoes were on there too.
Great. Well, Mary, thank you so much for being here. What a great webinar. Thank you again.
Thanks.
All right, so we are going to wrap it up here. So we have some upcoming webinars. We have Uncovering the Treasures of the Archives on March 3rd and Getting the Most Out of Your Insurance on March 17th. So if you are interested, sign up at minnesotalumni.org/alumni webinar series. If you're on social media, be sure to connect with the University of Minnesota Alumni Association on Twitter, LinkedIn, or visit our home webpage so you can see all of our different channels. In closing, members of the University of Minnesota Alumni Association make new initiatives like this webinar possible. Thank you. Because of members, we can enrich the lives of alumni, support student success, and make a better University of Minnesota. If you'd like to become a member today, you can visit us at minnesotaalumni.org/join. This is the conclusion of today's webinar. Thank you for joining us and being active members of the worldwide community of the University of Minnesota alumni and friends. Have a wonderful day.